super spiritual. So.
Some days. Hi, everyone. My name is Cassandra. I am most of the time a grateful alcoholic. I got to do this. I got to time myself because if I don't, I'm going to only share for like 12 minutes. All right. Meredith, wonderful. I'm super grateful to share this podium with you tonight. My sobriety date is 12/25/2011. I have a sponsor who knows she's my sponsor. I also sponsor other women. I try to stay in service as much as I can. Even when I'm feeling spiritually unfit, I think the thing that I've fallen back on the most is reaching out and helping another struggling alcoholic. There have been numerous women and a few men that have done that for me. And so growing up in, the world and AA and Fremont Fellowship as a kid, so the things that we got to pick up. I grew up in Greenwood. I considered myself the mayor of Greenwood for a long time. I had a household that I felt was very much like everybody else's. I had a bisexual father. I had a mother who doted on my sister and I, through everything. We always had what we needed. Typical middle class white family. I saw a lot of drinking in my household growing up. I would probably call my parents, more so my father, functioning alcoholics, high functioning. It didn't really ever seem to be a problem or anything that I really felt was different. But when I was 11 years old, I was at a wedding with my parents at my godparents' house, and it was some local band's wedding. And, my dad loved to party. You could just tell when he was around his people, he would just light up the room. And so he would never miss an opportunity. And if there was a way to bring the kids, he would. At this wedding, it was the first time I ever got drunk. It was cute. Everyone's feeding the 11-year-old champagne. And I kept going around and getting more and more. And people saw that I was drunk. And instead of it being a consequence, it was funny. I learned that day that alcohol was not a problem. Alcohol was just fine. That night I came home and I threw up in the kitchen sink, and my mom held my hair and my dad sat at the counter and laughed, and that was it. No repercussions, nothing. Through this program and kind of doing the math on my life, there has been some significant things that have happened. But the age of 11 was the first time I got drunk. I wanted to experience that again at any cost. The age of 12 was the first time I ever ran away or stayed out all night, did not come home. That was also the night that I lost my virginity to rape. By the age of 13, I had 2 felony charges. And before the age of 16, I was a 3-time felon. And you would normally catch me with braids in my hair because I was just coming out of the juvenile detention. I wish that I could say that I was some academic scholar or, that I had some quick turnaround, but that just isn't my story. And, I know this is a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, but drugs played a major role in my life. So alcohol graduated into, if you want to be able to drink all night, cocaine. Fixed. And you can drive. right?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, I learned again, from my time in jail, my networking, um, that there was ways to profit off of these things. I could turn my habit into something I wouldn't have to pay for, um, which to me made a lot of sense. Right? I didn't really do a lot of school. The highest grade that I completed in school was eighth grade. Um, but I was smart when it came to dumb shit. um, I was an early bloomer in the ways that didn't pan out. But that ended up turning into, selling drugs to my dad and doing drugs with my dad. And my dad owing me money and not wanting to pay me. And him throwing in my face when I asked for said money, I took care of you your whole life. Who do you think bought you all those Barbies? And, he would say shit like that. And, again, the household that I grew up in my mind was extremely normal. And it wasn't until I started like having some sort of social life and stepping into other people's homes that I realized that my house was not like other people's houses. We had a big old plastic butt on the wall, like in the kitchen, that my dad had gotten as a gag gift. And like people, it was in our kitchen, like right when you walk into the home. So people that like didn't know me very well, or like the first time coming to the house, they'd walk in and be like, "Oh fuck, there's a big ass right there." Um, and my parents were like, they were fun, and like at that age I was embarrassed because it was like, not everybody gets that, or like the inflatable party you, or just the random things that would be at our house. But I had a lot of really good times as a youth, and I would be lying if I said that I had a horrible abusive upbringing. But what I can say is that as soon as drugs and alcohol entered my life, it immediately became unmanageable. Um, Fast forward to becoming a legal adult, 2 weeks after my 18th birthday, I am drunk outside of a club, and I punch a guy in the face and I break his nose, and I go to adult jail. Um, and for some reason, I was afraid of adult jail. I thought it was going to be like some weird, like alternate universe from like juvenile, but it was exactly the same thing, just with more wrinkles. And um, I remember there was a woman in there that I was sharing a cell with who was allowed to keep one of her braids, and how excited she was about that. Throughout my use and drug dealing and ripping and running, I fancied myself tough, and it was one of the things that I had used to protect myself. I never saw myself as the pretty girl. I never saw myself as the sporty girl. I wasn't the grunge girl. Um, but, I remember learning how to fight and realizing that I was good. And then that was something that I took with me throughout my whole addiction and even into my recovery. Um, Violence, rage, all of those things, they just became part of my everyday life. Um, Between the age of 18 and 24, I went back to jail several more times. Um, I don't even really think that I could form a cohesive sentence when I came to these rooms for the first time in 2006. My sponsor's in the room tonight, and my sister and my best friend since first grade. And I think I'm glad because they can testify to some of these stories. And Barb knew me when I was feral, and Heather has known me from from the streets to the seats, and fuck my sister. I've been stealing her clothes since I was like 4. Um, and the lengths that we go to and the growth that we experience it's baffling to me sometimes. I got sober at Fremont. 2006, when I was 24 years old, I was looking at 36 to 48 months in 5-year enhancement possible. Um, and that was enough to get me to come. And I knew that I had to get sober. And I called my mom, bless her heart. And she's, sick of my shit for the last 12 some years and tells me you got to figure it out. So I call an all women treatment center, Residence 12, RIP. It was a great place. And they said, well, we can't take you. You have to have 72 hours clean. And I remember how desperate I felt and how defeated I felt when she told me that. And I said, lady, if I could get 72 hours, I wouldn't need you guys. She coached me, told me to lie. She said, have you ever taken pills? I was like, yeah, like years ago. And she's like, that doesn't matter. Just tell them you're coming down off of pills. And I was able to get into treatment. Almost got kicked out of treatment. Because again, I didn't know how to function. I was the only person in the treatment facility out of 50 women that was getting sober off of methamphetamines, because back in 2006, that wasn't a thing. There was a bunch of Coke moms, wine moms, and a few heroin junkies that were in there. Nobody was there getting sober off of what I was getting sober off of. And again, I leaned into my defense mechanism of violence and cussing people out, my rage and all that other stuff. And luckily there was a counselor there. Her name was Donna, last initial K. And they were reviewing my case or whatever against this other female and another counselor. And she pulled me into her office and sat me down and she said, Cassandra, I've been doing some reading about this. And she pulls out this jug of candy. This is a sugar-free facility also, by the way. She pulls out this jug of candy and says, I've been doing some reading on this, and it says that sugar can help with some of the things that you're experiencing. She's like, you can't eat it outside of my office. You can't tell the other girls, but I have convinced the staff to let you stay. And that was the first time in real life, outside of the lady that told me to lie. Lying was easy, but this was the first time that somebody advocated for me in a way that mattered. She stuck her neck out for me, and she saw that I really wanted this deal and I didn't know how to get it. When I got out of treatment, I went into the only place I knew, which was Fremont Fellowship. I believe that God puts things in my life for a reason. And my best friend's mom used to bring us to Fremont when we were little girls, when she would go to meetings. So it was a very obvious decision for me on where I should land. I ended up getting a job at the coffee shop next door. I met my second husband. I had a sponsor who introduced me. This is before I met my second husband, but introduced me to a gentleman who had 9 years and said we'd be a good match. Until he beat me up on Greenwood Avenue at about 11 o'clock at night because I wouldn't tell him that I loved him. And I had about 96 days sober at the time. And when I talked to my sponsor about it that night, she says, we'll talk about it tomorrow when you come to work. And I came to work, and she had her friend fire me from my job. And she wouldn't accept my calls anymore. That was my first stint with AA, my first experience of trying to do this program. So to me, I was like, okay, well, if that's how sponsors operate, fuck it. I'll just sit in Fremont and judge everybody for 3 years. And that's basically what I did. Of course, my sobriety date is not 2006. So there is a relapse in my situation. And once I had started to obtain all of the material things that we get from recovery, I had the cars in the driveway, I had the flat screens on the walls, I had the dog, I had the house, I had the man. I had the job. I had the things. I ticked all the boxes. I had all the external shit I could want. And on my honeymoon, a day before my 3-year birthday, I'm in the pool in Mexico drinking chongos sucias, which means dirty monkey, which is just basically chocolate banana and rum. Disgusting. The most disgusting, actually. I'm not gonna sugarcoat this deal. When I first came into these rooms, I thought I was a dope fiend. I didn't have a lot of the highlight reels to play from my drinking. It just didn't dawn on me until I went back out for a couple years. And my deal was like, oh, hey, well, at least I'm not smoking meth. Like, I'm just drinking. But then I also, I need the cocaine because I don't want to throw up, right? I don't want to be on the floor like sweating with alcohol poisoning or pooping in the tub. Like, we don't want that. So I use coke. And I don't want to be the one that has to buy it. So I'm the one that sells it. And within 2 years, I have gone all the way back, minus the meth, silver lining, no meth, but I'm all the way back to where I was when I first came in the rooms at 2006. I just had more material shit to run through. My husband was in treatment at the time. It was Christmas Eve. And my sister had got sober with me the first time. I, at one time, had 3 more months than her. The one thing I was going to beat her at. She stayed sober. And it was the weirdest thing because it's not like a profound like speech or anything crazy. But in that moment, it was incredibly profound to me. And we were sitting on the couch. It was Christmas Eve and I'm drinking a Heineken. I'm just like feeling crusty. I got my guy in treatment. I'm supposed to support him in some way. I don't even really like him. And like, I'm supposed to show up for him. And, it didn't make a lot of sense at the time. But when she said this to me, it dawned on me. It was like fucking a lightning bolt, And she just looks at me and she said, you don't have to do this anymore. And, my sister has been my spiritual advisor my entire fucking life. I just didn't really get to have that until we both got sober. She's a pretty special fucking human. But yeah, Christmas Day is my sobriety birthday, and it is the worst fucking day in my house to get sober because the very next morning, my dad's like, mimosas. And I just remember like it's early, it's like 8 a.m, and I look over at my sister and she just gives me this look like, it's up to you, bitch, like figure it out. And I was like, no, I'm good. And I was able to keep that, and throughout the years of my recovery, the first few years were pretty rough. I was real angry. And, I never really mourned the loss of methamphetamine because I knew that I didn't want to be the chick in the parking lot at Walmart at 3:00 in the morning looking for a burnt book of matches. I knew that about me. But when I lost alcohol, oh God, it was like a dagger to my heart. I mourned it. I mourned the loss of alcohol in my life. And some things happened in Washington, like they closed liquor stores and you could buy liquor in the grocery store. That pissed me off. Marijuana became illegal, and I'm like, what the fuck? I didn't even like weed. It made me paranoid. I thought everyone was the police, so that didn't matter as much. But I was like, man, I remember scrambling to get to the liquor store by 1:00 on a Saturday, dude. Like, people will never understand the stress ever. And I had my first sponsor, Louise was my sponsor for the first 7 years of my recovery. And I remember her laughing at me a lot. But Louise was, it was a match made by somebody else that I had knew in the program, somebody that knew me from my first round in the rooms. And they're like, I know exactly what you need. And, you know, it ended up being a 6 foot tall fucking lesbian who I probably wouldn't want to fight. That was it. He knew me. Like, I'm like, bro, how did you know? And I wasn't going to listen to some soft spoken spiritual person because I just wasn't ready for that yet. You know, I sat on my 4-step for 9, 10 months, 0 stars, do not recommend. Um, you know, and I went through the motions. I started the amends. Definitely recommend that. Started sponsoring women, and you know, some things happened in my recovery where I started to feel real good about myself, and I started collecting sponsees like shoes, and was just feeling my power, right? Because the external shit was starting to come back, but I also had this thing, right? I had sponsees, like a little flock of them, and you know, a half-assed message that I was sharing, and you know, I went through a divorce, a second divorce that about crushed me. And you know, in all of my infinite wisdom of AA, I went and got married again to a piece of shit and moved to Kent. um, just because we take the drugs and alcohol or the alcohol out of our lives doesn't mean we're not, you know, having those moments of unmanageability, right? Men, money, job. Those are my 3 things. Those are the 3 things that I constantly have to fucking pray about, that I constantly need to just connect about. And I ghosted AA for about 3 years over this guy. COVID hit, we got his kids. And I remember it took me about a year to plan my escape because he was not only physically violent, but he was also in the closet about some things. And just a really fucking scary dude. 6'7", about 300 pounds. The first man in my life that I've ever actually been that afraid of. And that was in recovery. That was me sober. I only say this part because I think it's important to really kind of note that time does not always equal quality. You know, coming back out of that, I knew that what I needed to do was I needed to get back into the rooms ASAP. And I knew that I needed to do it with women. So I immersed myself. I got a service position. I went back to Cherry Hall Fellowship Monday nights at 6. I reached out to all the women that would take my calls. And slowly but surely, I started to gain my footing in this room again. This room, that room, these rooms again. And 2021, actually the day that I left this guy, was also the same day that I found out my dad had terminal cancer. So he passed away November 21st, 2022, or 2021, 22nd of 2021. Yep. And since then, I lost like everything. I lost my job. I had my 3rd divorce before the age of 40. I was living in a musky basement. And I called it my troll hole, but it saved me. I was there for 2 years, you know, and that troll hole was my recovery zone because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. 10 years sober. I ended up getting a new sponsor. I went through the steps again. That sponsor had to separate with me, but you know, her help was pivotal. It's the first time I ever put myself on a 4-step. That's rough. And then I connected with Barb, and I've been connected with women this entire time. And this is one of those things that I talk about often, is because it was such a profound time in my recovery. And like in the 9-step promises, they say sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly. And I said this the other day, is that I've never had anything in my recovery come quickly, and I'm glad for that. My God knows full well that I need a slow fucking recovery, because otherwise I'm not going to remember how I had to get it. Now I get to talk about having time and being a piece of shit, but also having time and being good too. I get to talk about how we are still humans in this deal. And, all of the cliche things that I hated. And I know I'm not alone in this. Peeling back layers of the onion one day at a time. And it's like, hated that. But now that I've felt it and I've experienced the layers of the onion being removed, and like gaining more clarity on the program, on my spirituality, on my shortcomings, but also on the good things, the silver linings, the shift in perspective, all of these things that I've been gifted because of this program. I don't ever want to be on a soapbox. I don't ever want to have a gaggle of sponsees that, end up sleeping with each other and multiplying or whatever they did the last time. I honestly, I don't recommend people ghost AA. I don't recommend people sit on their 4-step, but I do recommend staying regardless of the situation. I'm grateful that I made it back. And I will be one of the first people to admit, probably the only reason why I stayed sober that 3 years is because I wanted to rub it in somebody's face. It wasn't because I was just, so filled with spirituality. I had 3 years of fucking energy to go off of, right? I'm grateful for the experiences that I've had in my life, and I'm grateful even for the shitty parts. I'm grateful for my sister, and I'm grateful for, my mom. And, I think about from the time that I was a kid, she would come to my games, and then she would come to my jail visits, and then she would come to my treatment visits, and then my other jail visits, and then she would get to see me get my insurance license. She would get to see me purchase my first home. And I get to be somebody that she's proud to have raised. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And I think that there's not a lot else that I can say without getting extra weepy, but the people that came here tonight to support me also, I'm extremely grateful for you guys. And thank you for loving me even when I'm feral and not all the way here. And Lara, thank you for the opportunity to give me for service.
Thanks.